Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time I'm going to try to rapid fire my way through several questions. Though before I do, I just want to say thank you to everybody who leaves questions. I always get a ton of them. I appreciate it so much, and if I don't answer yours, don't take it personally. Like I said, I get lots of them, and I kind of randomly pick and choose most of the time, or if something really strikes me, I'll make a whole video on it. Anyway, let's kick it off with this one from Lone Battle Droid, who asked, "Hey Thor, do you think the Clone Wars animation style is being overused? I like the style, but I don't want every show to be in this animation style. Plus, I wonder if it's too expensive. I know Lucas was losing money making Clone Wars, but didn't care, but I'm wondering if Disney faces a similar problem. I remember while watching Tales of the Jedi and later seasons of Bad Batch, that there were a lot of slower moments where the characters didn't move a lot, as opposed to Clone Wars, where I remember there was a lot more movement and fluidity to the characters." And that's a hard question, because I really do like the Clone Wars animation style, and I think it has come a long, long way over the last, 17 years now, since the Clone Wars movie and the first season of the Clone Wars, where it really looked kind of blocky and choppy. It didn't look bad, mind you, especially for the time, but compared to how it usually looks nowadays, it has come a long, long way, and I think it's really, really good. And it probably is really expensive, or not cheap at the very least. I don't know that it's the most expensive style of animation out there. But you're right, it probably isn't cheap, and who knows how much it costs them to make these shows, and if maybe they are trying to scale back, because, let's be real, the animated shows don't bring in the ratings that the live action shows do. Not that the live action shows have been bringing in impressive ratings lately, but you know what I mean. All that said, I'm open to a new style of animation. I think maybe it's time to try something new and different, because all the animated shows kind of look the same in a manner of speaking. Again, they look really good. I'm not knocking the style. I'm not saying they should abandon it forever, but it's kind of gotten maybe a little stale and old, and maybe something new would just kind of reinvigorate the animation side of Star Wars. I don't know. Maybe you just go all in on anime. I've said that before, that I think an anime show, a full real anime, not something like Resistance, might do really well, especially considering younger people really love anime. Not that older people don't enjoy it. I enjoy it. My wife enjoys it. Her father enjoys it. So it's not just a young person thing, but you know what I'm saying. I think younger people would be more likely to check out a Star Wars anime if they weren't just Star Wars fans in general than they would be to check out the next season of current Clone Wars animation, if you will. So yeah, don't hate it. I like it. I think it's great. I think it has come a long way, but maybe it is time for something a little different. I don't know. Like I said, good question, and I'm curious to see if they just keep going with Clone Wars animation, or maybe they do eventually change their mind, or maybe want to make something cheaper and go with a more traditional anime style. We'll see. Alright, and moving on, a somewhat related question that comes to us from Jacob P., who asked, "Hey Thor, I was thinking about the 2003 Clone Wars micro series and how it stacks up to the newer Clone Wars animated series. To me, not only is the micro series of consistent high quality, it also feels more faithful to the canon of 1 through 6, particularly with how Anakin is represented. While I enjoyed the newer Clone Wars quite a bit, I must admit I still struggle to see that Anakin as the same character from movies 2 and 3, and I am not a fan of many changes to the lore that the series made. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts comparing the two series, and whether you think the micro-series should still be canon." And first of all, I think it should absolutely still be canon. It kind of baffles me that they undid it in many ways. I don't know why you did that. It was beloved, it was really good, and it was a more simple story that I agree kind of fit really well with episodes 2 and 3, or between them. I do feel like that Anakin in there is more in line with the Anakin we see in the films, and that the Clone Wars series, the longer running series, Anakin is a little different. Not that he's bad, I like him for what he is, but he doesn't necessarily feel like the Hayden Anakin, the movie Anakin, and I know some people are probably going to disagree and think they're perfectly in line, but that's fine. I've always felt a little sense of disconnect between the two. Either way, I made a video not long ago talking about how much I loved how the Clone Wars micro-series ended and flowed right into the movie, into Revenge of the Sith. I think that was one of the coolest things Star Wars has ever done. I was so excited to watch Revenge of the Sith for the first time and realize that that series was like a literal prelude to what was happening in the film. That was so awesome, and I wish they would do more like that. And so by retconning that, when you really didn't have to, there's nothing in that Clone Wars micro series that the Clone Wars animated series had to mess with at all. It's not really long. It's not really involved. It doesn't really cover much. It covers basically the very beginning of the war or right after the start of it, and then the very end of it. And it does baffle me and it saddens me that it is not considered canon. I mean, again, it fits so well into the beginning of Revenge of the Sith that it doesn't make any sense to have undone that. So in my mind, it still is canon. It is my head canon. Okay, and moving right along, we now have a question or a two-parter from Ken Bonobi, who asked, Hey Thorpe, 2 questions. First, could another big reason The Last Jedi gets the hate is because there is resentment that it just wasn't good, and up until that point, Star Wars films still had mostly positive reception, with endearment as time wore on. I feel as if, as time passed, the bitterness towards The Last Jedi only intensified as the scope of how damaging it was gradually realized by more people, or was realized by more people. And to answer that part first, I think a very curious question would be if The Last Jedi had come out years ago before the age of social media and the internet being obviously as prevalent as it is or was 7 years ago when that film came out. Would people hate it as much if there weren't several videos on places like YouTube dissecting the movie and how bad it was, which, yes, I've made more than a few of those. And I do ask myself if a lot of the hate is because people were showing just how bad it was, in a manner of speaking, or from the point of view of the people who make the videos bashing the film or dissecting it. I don't want to say they convinced people that the movie was bad, but I do think they highlighted things that a lot of people would have never noticed, and that just kind of intensified and intensified. And yes, the movie, I think, my point of view or my opinion, is bad, and I think a lot of people realize that without anybody telling them. I made that video a couple days ago about my experience watching it the first time, and I had a lot of people saying pretty much the same thing, that they were kind of confused at first, like, was this bad or did I not like this? Because, as you say, they're kind of used to enjoying Star Wars films. But I do feel like part of it is that, yeah, people were watching videos, many videos, and pointing out all sorts of different kinds of issues with the movie. I mean, in that video I just talked about, I pointed out how the encounter between Kylo and Luke, he very much antagonizes Kylo and kind of pushes him to the dark side, which is very strange to do. And I know he's trying to distract them, or distract the First Order and Kylo so the rest of the Resistance can get away. I get that. But instead of taking this final opportunity, this last chance he may ever talk to Kylo Ren because he's about to die from forcing too hard, he doesn't try to appeal to his better nature. He just antagonizes him. He kind of mocks him. He quips at him at the end about "see her around, kid," and all that. And it reminds me very much of how Luke was treated by Vader in The Empire Strikes Back, where Vader obviously wasn't going to struggle against a partially trained Luke and just kind of toys with him, and he's trying to anger him, trying to frustrate him in order to turn him to the dark side after the plan to capture him fails. And it felt so very similar between the two, and after I talked about that in the video, I had a lot of people saying, wow, I never even thought about that, I never realized that. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. There are a lot of things in that movie that I think people wouldn't have noticed if others hadn't pointed that out to them. And getting to the second part of the question, you said, 2, should it have been Anakin to talk to Luke in The Last Jedi? I've always felt Disney/Lucasfilm missed a massive opportunity to link the trilogies, and that was the perfect opportunity, despite the glaring question of where were the Force Ghosts to tell Luke to get off his stuff and stop feeling sorry for himself a whole lot sooner. And yeah, that is the huge problem with the Force Ghosts. Where were they? Why were they not trying to convince Luke to, as you say, get off his duff and do something? We could, sure, make up all kinds of reasons why the Force Ghosts can't interact unless the person they are interacting with wants them there, essentially. And Luke had cut himself off from the Force or whatever, so maybe that's why they could not intervene. But if they are non-linear beings now, if they can see past, present, and future, which is supposedly what they can do, why didn't they see ahead of time that Luke was going to have all these issues and talk to him before that, or stop him from confronting Kylo or Ben in the hut that night and turning him to the dark side? Though the argument could be, well, the Force Ghost can see the whole timeline, so they knew eventually it would all work out this way. It's kind of like the Doctor Strange, Thanos, and Iron Man 1 scenario that works. At first it looks really bad, but eventually it goes right, I suppose. All that rambling done, I do think Anakin should have been the one to talk to Luke in The Last Jedi. I think that is the strangest decision the sequels made. They made a lot of bad ones, but the strangest one was not including Anakin more. When, whether you like it or not, whether you agree or not, it really is the Skywalker story. It is the story of Anakin. I've said it before, the prequels are the fall of Anakin, the original trilogy is his redemption, and the sequels should have been his legacy. Does the legacy of Anakin endure, or does the legacy of Vader endure? It could have been Kylo obsessed with the legacy of Vader versus Rey, who is trying to carry on the legacy of Anakin, especially if he had been, Luke's daughter or something. All right, I've rambled a bunch, so let's do one more question here, and it comes to us from XR, who asked, Hey Thor, totally agree about your take on how they treated Luke. Why not use the actor of the main 3 original trilogy characters that actually loves Star Wars and could not wait to reprise his role? He's the one that would have carried the new characters on his back. Arndt's first script was Luke-centric. I never even thought about the fact that by not treating Luke better in the movies and kind of turning Mark Hamill, in a manner of speaking, turning your most, I would say, devout Star Wars follower of the big 3, the one who, as you suggest, would have been out there, I think, pitching the movie all on his own and being a sort of ambassador for the new trilogy, they kind of turned him against the new movies by making Luke Jake Skywalker, as Hamill himself said.
Can I just say, though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans. And he said, no, we got to think about the story and we got to think about our movie, which
It really was such a strange decision to do what they did with Luke and do what they did to Mark Hamill, too. That again, he would have been the guy who happily, freely, willingly was out there really selling this trilogy and could have been that guy who ushered it in outside of the films themselves, ushered in this new generation of Star Wars characters, and had this very smooth transition. Instead, you destroyed his character, and considering how much Mark Hamill is known to be a Luke Skywalker, that is what he is most famous for. Yes, he did voice the Joker, very famous for that too, but most people know him as Luke Skywalker. And you pretty much destroyed that legacy on him. You killed the character, and no doubt killed his passion to pitch these movies and to really sell them, and he sort of faded into the background after The Last Jedi. Figuratively and literally. He wasn't out there selling the movies the way I think he would have had Luke been handled much, much differently. Alright, well I think that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you think of everything and anything I had to say here, or ask a question for a potential future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with, Hey Thor, you ask a question. I try to answer it in a future video, but whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.